According to market mix modeling, audio ads are 3.5 times more effective if they use stats, like 3.5 times.
Market mix modelling knows that everything is measurable. Right now, we are tracking your pupil dilation, galvanic skin response, and general levels of arousal, and determining the effectiveness of this ad.
Or if you want to get serious about measuring effectiveness, talk to Mutinex. They're the world's leading SaaS provider of market mix modeling. Marketers, think of it as a growth co-pilot. Mutinex, make better decisions.
Hi.
Hey, hi. This is always sort of super weird for us, isn't it, Adam? Because it used to be just the two of us in a studio, and podcasting is kind of an intimate thing, and it's always weird when you do it in a room full of people, don't you think?
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you to B&T, The Breakfast Club, one of my favourite films, and thank you, of course, to Mutinex, who have been a fabulous supporter of Black T-shirts, and we have their founder Henry with us today, and we have Clare from Lion, who heads up all their media. It's great to be here. Thanks for coming out on a Friday morning. No one leaves home on Fridays anymore, right? Like that's how it works. So Adam, I'm going to start with you, my friend. Anything you've seen lately that's kind of cool and interesting that's caught your attention?
We're going to get straight into it. Before we do, can I just do a little experiment?
Yep, sure.
So we're here to talk about unlearning, right? Is that what we're?
Yes.
Yeah.
We are.
So
We've really thought this through, Adam. You do realise podcasts are like not a visual medium, don't you?
what do you reckon's going on right now?
An
Awkward?
podcast.
Yeah. I don't know have we actually started the podcasty bit? Maybe. How are you guys feeling? Can I ask? Anyone? Anticipation? But kind of declining anticipation as I do this bit, right? And what else? How else are you guys feeling? You're feeling good? Why?
Because I get to listen to you guys.
Really?
And it's Friday.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for that generous
I felt
comment.
your silence was awkward.
Yeah. And what did you want to do in the silence?
Well, I clearly
You
did
did.
it.
You broke
started.
it, didn't you? You tried to.
I get very uncomfortable.
Yeah,
with long
you
silences.
tried to be affable. So, which is great, which is what you do. You always do that, which is nice.
Is this like a live performance review of my podcast co-hosting, or is
It's probably how you operate internally as well, I imagine. You're constantly, trying to make people feel good, which is not a bad thing at all. So, anyone else? Dylan, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. It's Friday. Some nice friends.
What role are you playing here, Ed? What are you doing?
You're making me feel uncomfortable and awkward.
I don't have your brand here, by the way. I am a bit thirsty. So there's I know this is taking a little bit longer than we anticipated, and some of you might be thinking, fuck, hurry up. I want to get on with this. I've got things to do. Some of you might be thinking, oh, this is interesting. This is going a little bit off script. Some of you might
it's going totally off script? Yes.
But I'm fascinated by this. And at the moment, I read there's a guy called Irvin Yalom who wrote a book called From the Heart: Tales of a Here and Now. Does anyone know Irvin? Have we got any Irvin fans in the room? Irvin Yalom? No. So Irvin has been a psychiatrist his whole life, and he's now got Alzheimer's. And so he can only see people once, and then he just forgets completely what happened, so he can't see anybody more than once. So what he has to do is he has to focus for that hour and try to help the person as much as he can in that hour, and then that's it. And so he's written a book about all of these 1 hour therapy sessions he has with people. And in order for that therapy session to be effective, he has to completely and utterly be in the moment and listen to the person, and then rely on the fact that everybody just operates in patterns of behaviour. So whatever's happening in that hour, whatever's happening in that moment is probably happening to that person over and over again. So unfortunately, Ed, you're probably feeling awkward a lot of the time. I'm joking, I know, Ed. But you know, Tom, you're probably kind of, kind of giving a positive, you're being affable all the time, and that's the roles you play. The roles we play over and over and over and over and over again. And when it comes to unlearning and all of this kind of stuff, what we're here to do today, I think what the answer is if we've piled up a whole lot of knowledge about something and the whole world's fucking going off a cliff or changing in another direction, and we have to try to learn something, I reckon just having to have extreme self-acceptance and really understanding what you're bringing to the table, what your patterns are, and really trying to stop and process and understand that is really vitally important. And that's why I love this whole thing of just, right, what's happening in this moment? Because that's probably all you've got. And then from there, we can start to address things in a new way. So that's what I wanted to say.
Fantastic. You don't happen to be a trained psychologist at all, do you, Adam?
I am a trained psychologist, but I'm a bastardised one who's spent a lot of time talking to consumers about buying Mars bars as opposed to this stuff.
So as you think about this idea of unlearning and applying it to marketing, what's an example of something that you've had to unlearn, or maybe more to the point that you think your clients might need to unlearn?
I think this whole concept of learning is based on layers of information. We get layers and layers and layers of information. I think the hard thing is knowing when that layer of information is worth embedding into your current schema, your current worldview. So if we spent 10 years learning about personalisation, for example, which might be a topic to speak about later, and I've always seen marketing as a mass market game, and I've always never been able to see the value in personalisation or personalising messages. In fact, it makes me, when I get personalised messages, it makes me feel a bit gross. And so I think that would be an example of, I don't know if it's learning, but it's just wondering when the information's good enough to apply to your existing worldview and to put that on top of it. So we learned the NFTs, had to unlearn NFTs, maybe had to unlearn the metaverse, and now coming off those things, we have to think, oh no, this AI thing's fucking the real deal. We've got to invest time into that, for example.
So just on the personalisation, highly targeted, Henry, you've got some pretty strong views around that. Targeting is a lie, I believe, is something that you said quite recently. Do you want to?
I said it to you.
Do you want to unpack?
Right.
Do you want to unpack that a little bit?
Well, so I spent the first. Well, not a lot of people know this, but I spent the first kind of 5 years of my career as a digital strategist, so someone who was kind of analysing data, but very much in a digital agency on the drug of performance marketing, and when I was in those digital agencies, one of the things that sort of happened is, and you don't realise it at the time, but the learning agenda from 2010 to 2018, I think was largely set and captured by big tech for marketers. So if you think about the drugs that we were all on, we were all being trained that these numbers kind of mean a whole heap, that if the second you see a platform ROI reported by a platform that's incredibly trustworthy, etc., etc., and we kind of got captured mentally on this. And I spoke to a very, very clever engineer from a company that shall remain unnamed, but one of the big companies, very senior engineer, and I said, how do you guys think about targeting and personalization and whether or not that drives an ROI? And they said, actually, we don't think of it like that. We think of each targeting segment as how much can we inflate the CPMs and force advertisers to bid against each other. Which was an incredible statement when you think about it. When you think about, is targeting actually a mechanism for margin extraction from advertisers, as opposed to something to make advertising better? And you think about, I was conditioned very early on to think, personalization, last click, all of these things were critically important. But when you look at the P&L, one of the things that struck me, and I remember it was a mentor of mine at the time, and they said, look at the number of companies that are invested in personalization and measuring kind of bottom of funnel, how many of those companies' P&Ls are growing? Look at the companies who are able to measure their full funnel, their pricing tactics, their distribution, all of that sort of thing. How many of those companies are growing? And the correlation is not causation, but of those things is very, very high. So I think, to your point around targeting and to your point about like what did I have to unlearn as well, both personally, but I think as an industry, the capture of the learning agenda by big technology to set marketing effectiveness principles, and if, in effect, large people with huge conflicts of interest on ad inventory, defining the principles of marketing effectiveness, I think has been a critically bad decision for an industry to learn true marketing effectiveness principles. And so I think, as an industry, we've got to unlearn that. It's certainly something I've had to go through.
Yeah, right. Claire, I'm going to throw to you. So Claire, you had a long career in media agencies. You ran Procter & Gamble in China, had big media jobs, and then you became a client.
Yes.
Coming over to Lion to run the media at Lion.
Yeah.
What did you have to unlearn going from a media agency to being a marketer inside a corporation?
A lot. To stop swearing or make them start swearing was one of them. One of the biggest things was how little advertising media even not matter, but how that's just such one small part of a marketer's day, and then how much marketers is one small part of a company that's 2,000 people. So when we were media side, we'd be like, please give us your sales and we can definitely give you a media plan that will help impact that and maybe help, but we didn't know that there could be stuff going on in supply chain that nothing can affect. Actually, what we need to do is find out what the KPIs for that marketer is, because they will have been set by the business. They want that marketer to drive this aspect of the business. Find out what they are and then try to shape a response to a brief, not just for that, like that's not the job, but ensure that you can shape that response that way, because they will be much more inclined to listen to you and to let you go with it and then trust you as the expert. That was the other thing. The first time I got there and I presented something, everyone went, yeah, okay, cool. I was like, what? And they're like, you obviously know what you're talking about. I was like, wow, that's a leap of faith. But they want to trust an expert. They have to be such a generalist. So unlearning the importance of where media advertising sits within, and it's very important. I know it's important, but it's not the big thing, the main thing they're doing that day.
It's interesting what you said about, I think, being seen as an expert within corporate. So the big thing I had to unlearn when I went from agency side to marketing side, and I had a fantastic first boss who was very patient as I made that transition, and she said to me, you don't have to sell anymore. I think one of the biggest things agency people are so used to is because we're trying to influence and we're trying to sell a creative idea or sell a recommendation, we're constantly selling. And inside corporations, that's not the way to do it. Like, especially, it actually has less influence.
I agree.
Than you just being
so we do
an expert.
The deck, we recap the brief, we go up to the big reveal, and they don't want to know that. They want to know, firstly, from a media world, the first thing they want to see is, have you not overshot the budget and have you hit the reach? Yes, yes. Then you can show them all the exciting ways that you're doing that, but that is the antithesis of how an agency sells, which is build the story and then do the reveal. And there's a real disconnect there that has to be bridged in order for it to work for both of them.
And it's interesting now, we work with Michael Walker at B&T Eagle on Fire, who's a fabulous creative. Micah's approach to selling, he says if it's in the room, it's for sale.
Yeah.
So he says, I've already done the work. I've filtered out a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Everything I put in the room, I love and I think is good, and it's for sale. And that totally changes the dynamic. He's not trying to sell to me.
Yeah.
He's just putting really good work in the room.
Yeah.
And it's just a different sort of dynamic. How do you feel about Adam? Obviously, massive part of what you do is trying to sell to clients, influence clients. How do you think about it, Tinkerbell?
I heard once that there's no selling, there's just listening and delivering, and I like that. So we kind of, if you find yourself trying to sell something, it's probably the wrong idea, it's the right idea at the wrong time, but you haven't taken people on the right journey or got the right involvement. So So I hate the idea of ever having to sell, and I hate the idea of being sold to, and if I feel that's happening, I don't like it. Having said all of that, I do reckon there are skills you get in an agency which is about simplifying the message or trying to understand about the benefit of what you're trying to do rather than get held up on other things. So you do instinctively try to understand how to communicate. And I think those skills are really valuable. I think those skills are really valuable internally within an organisation. And I think those skills are almost non-existent at the moment in large areas of society. So like if you've got an infrastructure project and you're trying to build a bridge and you need somebody to invest, $500 million into building this bridge, the conversation between those two people, I reckon somebody from our background could go in there and have a more effective potentially have a more effective kind of conversation than listening to these boffins try to work out how much cement they need or whatever. I reckon you could sell the dream of the connection or whatever it is a bit more. So there's large areas of society that I think are skills.
I do think that sounds like a dangerous way to build a bridge.
Sending in Adam Ferrier to...
You're probably right.
No,
you're probably right. This be fucking fine. It'll be great.
No, I think Adam's point. I think your point is that there is a more persuasive way of
agreement
storytelling.
to build the bridge.
No, we should stay in our lane.
Okay,
I'm with you.
But Adam used the word boffin, Henry, and I'd hate to suggest that econometrics is full of boffins.
What?
But how do you think about that in terms of what you do is... My mic's just fallen off. What you do is pretty complicated, not that easy to explain. How do you think about storytelling, selling, in the world of econometric modelling? Do you even call it anymore? Sorry, I'm not meant to call it that.
Call it
world of
market mix, not media mix, is kind of my current shtick. But look, I think I think about the world. So I've kind of sharpened my view on this. I think Mark Thomas is in the room, and he knows I alternate between being really good at selling and really shit at selling, and when it kind of there's not much between that. But look, I think one of the big problems with measurement and econometrics in general, and just like the general MarTech landscape, is it's not very product and problem orientated at the moment. Like, how many people look at their MarTech stack and go, yeah, I really know what problems this MarTech stack is solving. Like, honestly, I still to this day have not seen a wonderful use case for like all the third-party brokered data that we seem to buy on the ether and does sweet fuck all for brand building. So I think, the critical thing that I think about in econometrics is, well, okay, what do people actually want from measurement? Because it's not measurement, right? Like you don't jump in and get measurement, but for the end goal of measurement. What you're looking for is answers. And so I think that one of the critical things that I've come to believe is that the measurement system doesn't really matter as much as the measurement system's ability to get to a really good answer that you can trust about a problem and give you kind of data to kind of start that conversation. Now, answers are not solutions as well, and I think this is a really important distinction between like how measurement is perceived versus how it should be used. So a lot of the time, a great friend of mine and a friend of yours, Nick Garrett, we talk a lot about problem design versus solution design, and how measurement should be used to frame up and understand what the problem is, but absolutely should never play a role in the development of the solution. And I think that's such an important way to frame measurement. I think data is being like largely misused at the moment. And what we actually want the measurement stacks to do is to kind of take down the cost of getting an answer quickly and things like that. Like I kind of was speaking to some very large CMOs in the US, and you just kind of go, the average marketer, I mean, how many marketers in this room have been in a room with a finance team, CFO, and you've been asked something about what's going to happen here and had to say, let me get back to you? Yeah, pretty much everyone. Yeah. So the second you say, let me get back to you, 50% of the time you lose control of the decision. And I think
So you suggest we should bullshit or?
No, I'm suggesting we need to speed up the infrastructure to get answers, to be in the room pretty seamlessly. And I think that's the real product goal to solve in measurement. Yeah. I don't think measurement in and of itself is a product.
So something you said, Claire, was despite working on Procter & Gamble and you know, media agencies always have lots of data and you actually said that measurement was something you were a little bit scared of before you came to Lion. So why?
Well, but actually before I came to P&G, because it's often considered by certainly marketers as a pass-fail. Did you achieve? Did you not achieve? And that's not what we should use it for at all. We use Mutinex. Within every channel you get an ROI. The goal is not to cut one channel's expenditure and improve the others to drive your ROI. I've seen that go. P&G were doing it for years and years, but a long time ago. And then they're just suddenly prioritising high ROI channels, but they were very low volume channels. So, and they're not brand building channels such as search. So learning, being comfortable that whatever the answer is, you've got something to learn and build from it is what's the value in measurement. But you have to bring everyone along that journey, because we were at dinner a while ago and I heard someone from a big company say that their board had said, how do we double our ROI? And it was like a fundamental misunderstanding of ROI. That would be real easy. Cut your budget, just spend it on search. You'll double it, but what are you going to do for your business and your brand? So the point is measurement, all measurement. Like even when I used to sit down and do my TV buys as a little TV buyer, and every week we'd have to report, did we get the ratings we estimated we did? And it was bloody terrifying to the CEO. But that taught me how to understand what shows were going to do well and how to buy them, which was a specific skill set I don't need now, obviously. But it was frightening, but you will learn so much, and then your skill and your craft and the job you're doing will be so much better. So lean into it and don't let anyone see it as a pass-fail type of transaction.
This is a long-winded question, but I met, one of the first times I met Henry was about 8 years ago, and he emailed me and said, "Oh, I see you've got 1-3 cabs to the client. Did you know that if you that Uber's API is open source, and you can go into Uber's API, find out where they're searching the areas, and then you can just do 1-3 cabs ads in those areas and say we don't have surge pricing." And I was like, "Oh fuck, that's pretty cool. Who's Henry? Okay, great." And we ended up thinking that is just sheer brilliance, and we did it.
Did it work?
Did I get a credit for that?
No, I don't know. No, Troy, you're getting 8 years later, you're getting credit.
Did it work?
Let's just say, for the sake of this conversation, yes.
Okay.
But I don't think we set up an experimental condition where we kind of worked out whether it worked or didn't work. So broadly, it worked, and we were happy with it. My point, that's pretty fucking cool. You got the Tui's, the Blues, the New South Wales Blues, to start singing the Tui's new anthem because they didn't have a song. And so they started singing I Feel Like a Tui's after one game 2 and game 3 of the thing. You got people to do this fucking ridiculous walk all over Australia just by leaning backwards and doing this kind of silly walk.
Oh, it's the best.
That's the Tell Strut, my friend.
What I like about the conversation around measurement, about what you two just said before, was you're not trying to get a pass or fail. You're kind of trying to use measurement to create a platform of confidence. We're going to go in that direction, and we're confident we're going to do that because it's the right thing to do. But then allowing for these spontaneous bits of magic to happen on top of that. And what I do get worried about the misuse of measurement is we're trying to control everything, going, you must do that, and therefore the whole kind of interesting or serendipitous bit of what we do starts to die.
I think there's very much I get quite frustrated when I'm asked to do a test and learn, because I'm like, never seen one that doesn't fail, because no marketers want to know about that. If it fails, it disappears. So it's like, well, what are we actually testing, and are we going to be comfortable that it was a complete failure, but we've learned this, and this is how we'll make it better. And I find that test and learn can be a pretty glib request, particularly to media agencies, that isn't real. That what they want to do is come and say, we took a risk and it was amazing. But you might be lucky with that, but you also have to fail to get there. I mean, we know that in almost every other aspect of our life, but I think sometimes marketing can be a bit afraid of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I love doing tests, in-market tests, because, you know, I just think instead of doing some research, I'll go and do something in the market and see what happens. So things like, how do you prove out that spending more on brand, right, is actually going to drive your retail numbers at the same time? Yeah. That's a pretty big leap of faith that you're asking someone to go on. So we, for instance, doubled our brand spend in Adelaide, held Adelaide at a 50-50 brand to performance ratio for 6 months. And the brilliant thing was that I could go in and show that store traffic didn't drop. Yeah. E-commerce numbers didn't drop. You know,
presumably you were comfortable if those things did drop.
Well, if they did, well, I guess I was pretty confident that it was going to prove out. Yeah. But no, it's a good point you make. I mean, it worked and it was a positive test. But I do think sometimes just having that tangible evidence is super powerful.
Do you think you would have known if it didn't work?
If it didn't work?
Do you think that information would have come back to you? Yeah. That it said, no, you're screwing.
Well, to Claire's point, would have I buried it? I think is what Claire's saying, right? Would have I buried it?
Well, we wouldn't be having this. You wouldn't be using that anecdote right now.
Well, I wouldn't, and I wouldn't have probably invested as quickly as I did behind brand if it hadn't worked.
Yeah. And I know something as big as us. I mean, obviously, if you're in test and learn, it needs to be a little bit small if you're not sure and you think it's going to fail. You don't want to lose your business or be, but you do have to be. So do it really small. Properly measure it. That's the other thing. Test and learns are often actually just do this and see what happens. Like put measurement in place, but be prepared. Like maybe you would have, if it wasn't working, pulled it within 1 month. Yeah. And not lost so much, but at least you've got to be open to that. Or else you're just doing a campaign. You're not doing a test and learn.
Yeah. Well, I guess you're trying to prove or disprove, like going with a sort of clear hypothesis, you're trying to prove or disprove. Exactly. But I don't know, how do you think about testing, Henry?
I think that largely, I think the cool thing about where measurement is going, like what is a test? Test is just at its core variation and an observation. And what we call tests are really just more and more tightly controlled observations. We like to call tests causative, but they're not. They're just more tightly observed correlations is the right way to talk about it. I think the cool thing about, and kind of the thing that I think isn't, where we're all a bit behind in kind of our thinking, is really every campaign, everything you put out there, everything that you do, particularly if you have good measurement, but even if you don't, is an opportunity to learn. And I think that within most organisations, like I remember the other day talking about, I'm playing around with a new metric at the moment for media, which is like what's the learn rate, right?
Learn rate,
which is like what's the number of kind of things that we can document learning off our media budget each kind of month, and what's the rate of success on those things or failure on those things, and are we just improving the rate of
the internal learn rate? So how quickly the company is getting smarter.
Correct. Yeah. Right. How quickly does the company get? Because I think the focus to Claire's point on ROI is myopic, right? I mean, Byron Sharp said it the other day. I happen to agree with some of his comments on MMM, that that MMM is used in a highly myopic way at sometimes to just look and try to quantify ROI. And a big part of that, I think, is because most MMM traditionally has been like a report card built every 6 months. If you're looking at a report card every 6 months, it becomes an academic study in, to your point, pass and fail.
And also with recommendations that are, so several times in my career, we've been given recommendations from an MMM study that can't live in the real world. And particularly being alcohol, obviously, I can get more efficient if I could buy in the news versus post 8:30, but I'm not legally allowed to. So that was pointless. So I think they can be really myopic and they can be seen as myopic, but they're really important because the CFO who doesn't know and the rest of the business understand marketing, if you can say, but by spending this, we are driving this, and there was no other way to really do that if you're selling like we do, so not direct, then they can be quite useful. But the people who use them, which is why I won't let you sort of open it up within our organisation until everyone understands and has been trained. It is not about going, out of home doesn't work for me, but this does, so let's just axe out of home. It's like, how are we going to drive out of home to be better for us? That's the point of it, from my perspective.
Yeah, but I think like, look, like again, I just come back to like the structural reasons why our industry has not learned. It's because a lot of the kind of platform metrics have been used for vanity, not for learning purposes. Like when metrics are set up for rationalization, not learning, then that's an objectively bad thing, and that's where we have been as an industry.
Vanity or ass covering?
It's the same thing. It's a politer way of saying ass covering. But but the second thing as well is that and the true measurement systems have really been scorecards done every 6 months, and that have largely been pretty useless for marketers to action. What I think the future of the measurement sector will be is, how do we embed these platforms with, answers that are coming out to help us learn more at a more rapid pace, to actually start to uncover and turn the media budget into a learning exercise as well. And I think if you're kind of starting to frame up media that way, is, right now we very rarely talk about media spend as an intelligence asset. But like, what's happening to your media spend and what it's doing in the market and how it's growing your business both the short and long term can actually be one of the best sources of first-party data that a business has. I tell you, it's way better than all those fake profiles that you've got via competitions. It's about 50 times better. And so, we spend so much time, I think, on just the wrong fucking things in data and measurement. We spend all this time kind of thinking about, how do we score each other? How do we kind of, ask cover, to your point? How do we kind of, collect, when Bob mowed his lawn to try to sell him a piece of shampoo? What a ridiculous idea. And so, and rather than how do we kind of equip everything that we're doing to learn rapidly and get answers rapidly about very complex markets we operate in.
Having Henry, or talking to Henry, you kind of feel like you're cruising up here, then suddenly you're kind of down here having this bloody fucking full-on conversation, then back up again. I love that idea of a learn rate. I love that idea of what do we need to put in place in order to learn and keep on learning. So what platform, what part of our marketing process are we doing? Are we setting up something? So we're not just learning one-off pieces of information, but we're setting it up systemically to kind of keep on learning on. And I think that's really cool, really interesting. Brent, the reason why I'd make a crap CMO?
Risk and compliance meetings?
Apart from that, it's really, really complicated, and it can also be incredibly slow and tough. For example, how do you decide how much money to put into brand spending?
Yeah, it's a big decision, and I think we've seen a lot of marketers be really addicted to the drug of performance marketing, which gives you an immediate payback. But I think you really want to be understanding the long-term benefits of brand. You need to measure that over time, and you need to also understand that if you start trading off, spending more on brand, less on performance, you need to know straight away, is that working? Is it delivering? And so you need some sort of model to do that. Without a model, I don't know how you'd even start.
Such as what?
Well, Mutinex. It's the best one out there. It's the best one out there, man. It's SaaS-based. It's really one of the most cutting-edge marketing mix models you can get. And if you have got hard questions that you're trying to confront as a marketer, I would thoroughly recommend a tool like Mutinex.
They're also the sponsor of this show, right?
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. When you're using MMMs, and with your portfolio of brands, functionally, they're all pretty similar.
Yeah.
And the difference between the brands is often at a intangible or an emotive level or something.
Yeah.
How much fidelity do you get? Does the brand's role and how that brand acts and how that brand should act? How much is that taken into an account when you're using MMMs?
So for us, not a huge amount, because the MMM is just telling us what we're spending and what volume it's driving or profit. And from a media perspective, that is the job of the media team and the media agency to prove it. The question...
So it's more at a category level. You're looking at it more as at a portfolio level?
So there are, like, as you would know, we have media principles that apply across all of the brands, because I'm very media purist in that it's about getting people to see the message. And that's its first job. Media isn't going to change anyone's mind. It's what's seeing it. So my job is to get people to see it. So all the brands, whether you're Hiaketsu, which is our alcoholic lemonade, drink it, or Tui's New, have a similar media strategy. So MMMs can show, so the ROI, we can see some differences in there. Like, why is the 6 second really driving it for Hiaketsu but not for Tui's New? Not, is it a creative thing? Is it a where do we buy it? Things like that. But in terms of, I mean, I do get the marketers say, how can we put the creative learning into this? How can we put at least the campaign names and then test? And I really push back on that. I do not think the quality of creative can be measured by an ROI number. It's a bit of an alchemy. Like, if we knew, make an ad like this, show it to this person, get a sale, then none of us would need a job.
So you've been on the other end of that as Yates. So how has it sort of evolved in terms of pre-testing and thinking about creative work online?
It depends on how you want me to answer it. I have a strong personal opinion, and then I have a professional opinion.
Well, why don't we go professional opinion first, and then we'll get your personal opinion.
Well, to be honest, I'd rather just talk about it at a personal level.
Okay.
At a personal
So
level.
this is Adam Ferrier, Black T-shirts co-host, not Adam Ferrier.
Yeah. At a personal level, I'm happy to do anything if it adds to the creative and effective journey of that piece of work. And so I still kind of struggle with pre-testing in that I haven't seen any independent research done that says pre-testing adds any value to the creative output. There's lots of snake oil salesmen who'll say it does, and there's some pretty kind of globally established tools now that really good
System One.
That's the one.
people. System One would be one of them who kind of lots of really people who I really respect kind of really endorse it. And then you have to think the value of it is probably not in the effective output of a piece of work. The value in it is around internal alignment, which will therefore make something happen.
Like Claire said, building the conviction.
Building the conviction. So
Yes.
like we track our NPS. NPS is, by all accounts, a ridiculous thing to measure. But when we talk about our NPS, we've been tracking since we started. It allows us to have a conversation with our clients. It allows us to track it over time. It's not meant to have much fidelity at all, but we find it really useful. And so I think pre-testing can be really useful, but just not for what it was intended to necessarily do.
Yeah.
What's your view, Henry? How do you think about creative within the models, and how can how do you think marketers should be thinking about building that creative conviction that Claire talks about?
Yeah, so I think we'll have a bit more to say on building creative into MMMs, I'd say, in the next kind of 6 to 8 weeks, in terms of, I've been told there's a limited amount I can say because we need to file a patent.
So something's coming.
Yeah, something's coming.
Uh-huh.
But I think that from, and you're not allowed to talk about things before we file patents, apparently.
That's
I'm
okay.
told by our general counsel
That's fine, you didn't say anything.
So I think a few things, like I think
The patents exist in Australia.
Yeah.
Patents are thing.
No, I'll tell you the thing about patents. It's really annoying. You have to file them in each country individually.
Yeah, right.
Each jurisdiction, and you're not allowed to even commercialise.
Why are Americans obsessed with patents, but we're not here? What's the difference? What's driving that?
I think because they actually make things in America.
Right.
Ooh.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, there's
back
not more I can
to back to testing creativity, Henry.
So we could get very distracted, I feel. But I think so testing creativity, I think It depends on what it's for. Like with all data, I think there's two aspects to measurement. There's a political aspect in a company, and then there's a practical and learning aspect to a company. Because creativity is trying, like a learning aspect typically comes in the problem design space, right? So in the space where we're trying to learn about what the right problem to solve is, and that's where data to learn is quite helpful. I feel that creative is very much a solution design space, and so therefore it's very rare that data can play a meaningful role in defining solution design. I think that from a principle perspective doesn't quite work. That said, on the second use case of data, which is politics, it's exceptionally helpful.
Yeah.
And so, because I think the thing we always forget is that most companies are subject to the whims of public markets. But that means that most companies' CFOs are required to some degree to generate a level of predictability for a company across their investments. And that's the culture that permeates then through organizations and why the public markets dictate that requirement for predictability. So I think what pre-testing does is it gives the illusion of predictability to a very unpredictable thing. And I think that illusion is incredibly valuable for companies to take bigger and bolder risks.
And System 1?
Big fan.
Yeah?
But I think I've seen a lot of the data tested in an econometric context. So lining up with, does a good System 1 pre-test that has their kind of spikes in their long-term outcome generally play out in the sales data that you see? And the answer to that is yes. It's not. I have seen the data on that.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I don't know enough about the methodology to know if that's sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I just fundamentally believe is that we're getting less and less data directly from consumers over time, and I think regulation is going to continue to push that way. I think AI is going to exacerbate the consumer protection issue, and so I think it's going to get harder and harder to do these things over time. So the tools that work today are also, I'm quite conscious that, they may not work tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. One thing that we've spent a lot of time learning in marketing, and Adam, you've been a big proponent of, fan of, is marketing science. And I feel like a lot of marketers now have learnt the rules, are slavishly following the rules.
No.
Is this a good thing, or should we have some unlearning?
I think lots of marketers have learnt the rules. I don't know any who are slavishly following them.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know anyone. Are there 10 rules in Byron's book? I don't even know how many rules there are.
I think it's 14.
14?
Yes.
I don't know how many people could recite those 14 rules.
I can't.
No, I didn't even know there was 14. And I don't know anybody who applies them religiously. I think what they've done, with the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, has done an amazing job of levelling up the playing field. And I think for about 5 years there, you could go to America and look really, really smart because they didn't know what was going on. And kind of Australia and New Zealand did because of our proximity to the Ehrenberg Bass Institute. And now it feels like they've got the memo as well, and their marketing kind of effectiveness has lifted as well now. And so I feel like it's just lifted the playing field for everybody. It's kind of evened it out. We now know what we're doing. I think now that the playing field's been lifted in terms of marketing sciences, we understand the basic principles of how marketing works, how consumers make decisions and so forth. I think then it's up to us in terms of, do we want to fuck with those rules or not, or do we want to play around the edges or whatever? But I think that's a much more intentional choice. We know what we're sacrificing, and we know what we're not doing.
So you think we need to do more, follow the rules more often? So you're saying? I think we need to know the rules and then understand our own brand and the category our brand operates in, and then make decisions that's right for brand growth. But if they align with the rules, then great. If they don't, then that's fine. And I do like the examples I used before of those of Henry and the surge thing, the song, your dance,
not dance, you'll walk.
Telstra.
The Telstra walk, the
TM.
Telstra strut. All of those things are not necessarily within the Ehrenberg-Bass laws of growth. But from good foundations of understanding how brands grow, then those bits of magic can start to happen with more confidence because you know the playing field of how a brand's meant to grow. So distinctiveness, for example, I think is really interesting. Turning up as you are, turning up as your brand should. If we all understand what distinctiveness means, then we can make sure we build really strong distinctive assets, and then we can also make conscious choices to break those rules and say, well, we don't have enough distinctiveness here. Let's try to create something new and then roll that out. But without knowing about how distinctiveness works, for example, you can't intentionally make those decisions.
How do you think about that at Lion? How do you think about marketing science?
Oh yeah, we're pretty for it. I got my job because I just deployed those principles in China for Procter & Gamble, because I think Mark Pritchard was one of the first people to read Byron's book 5 years after he'd written it, and quick pivot from hyper-targeting, hyper-frequency to broad. So did that, came here in Lion, was very into it. And a lot of it really made sense to me. Brand loyalty, marketers think that's a thing, but regular people, unless you're particularly interested in a couple of things, you might say you're loyal, you might feel that out, but if you can be changed. Your mind can be changed, your circumstance can be changed. So to continue to just speak to the loyalists, I noticed it. It's not quite the same now, but when everyone was advertising on Meta, the whole goal was and likes and interactions.
Yeah.
And I really liked that what came out of that was if someone's already following and liking your brand, we don't need to, from a media perspective, talk to them. We got them. We're trying to grow the penetration, which grows the brand. We need to talk to a wider audience. So the media principles I very much do believe in, because just constantly talk, it's how media's been done since it was invented in the 30s. Just keep talking to people as often as you can and as broadly as you can, and something will stick.
I like thinking about this in terms of influencer marketing and working out who your influencers are and working out what the role they play in terms of building the brand, and then kind of almost looking at the marketing scientists sniggering, thinking, oh, you're using influencers. And yet you're still using influencers to create mental and physical availability. You're still using influencers to help build brand equity, which even that might be, I think, a bit of a debatable term. But you're still using them for the same laws of growth, or whatever you want to say. But it's just a new way of.
The biggest thing is it's got to be multi-channel. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Influencers are what we used to call word of mouth from family and friends, and we all knew that was the strongest driver of penetration. So you do need to use them, but you've got to be really, in my mind, tight with influencers. It should be about interaction because they're doing a different job. It shouldn't be about reach, and it should be. They should have KPIs, because when the PR companies took over them, they don't really have many KPIs. But yeah, influencers are important. Frequency is important. I felt that Ehrenberg, the rules just widened it up so we weren't getting so tight and spending a lot of money on what Henry's now informed us was just a way to pay higher CPMs and not actually do anything effective.
How does influencer marketing show up on the models, Henry?
Well, it's another form of media and reach, isn't it? I think media. The value of the models is to assess whether or not, to Claire's points, to some degree, they assess whether or not there are certain routes that are more efficient to generate penetration. And I think that's not a bad way to frame the models. And so influencers are just another form of that. I think, when you're talking about the principles of kind of effectiveness and stuff like that, again, I just come back to, some of what Byron Sharp says. Byron Sharp famously hates market mix models, famously. One of the reasons he hates them is because a lot of the time they are built highly bespoke on an individual brand with not enough data and they're kind of, tweaked to fit that brand's narrative or that brand's data. And it's more about how can we fit the sales versus how can we kind of embed true general principles and then explain them quantitatively. And I think that's a huge reason why we've opted to try to create like quite generalized structures in our models to try to embed those marketing science principles in the models and explain them quantitatively. So that when you come down to something like influencers, it's what are the marketing science principles that drive them, and then how do we explain them quantitatively? So that's things like reach, that's things like, do some of them hit specifically very different audiences, is kind of worth kind of exploring, and was there kind of a different campaign asset that they're using, or a different message of distinction that they're using? Those are really the things that are important, and if you can understand how and why those are showing up, they apply really well to influencers, but they equally apply really well to like television, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, too often the amount of people that kind of say, it's really, really important to build a highly bespoke market mix model, et cetera, et cetera. And I go, based on what? There's no evidence to say that the laws of marketing science change dramatically from brand to brand. There's a lot of evidence to say that it's very convenient for a market mix modeler to sell you confirmation bias with a highly bespoke, customized piece of work. And so I think that's, for me, there's a very important principle at play, which is how do we start to embed marketing science across the industry, both at the data level, also at the kind of, support level, how we're talking about using these models, how we're framing these models, needs to all be through that lens. The great thing about how brands grow is really, when you read it, it does read like a book of statistics.
Yeah, it's a cure for insomnia, I think.
Yeah. So, but I mean, there's lots of tables in there. There's lots of tables with lots of observations about how brands grow across various different contexts. So quite clearly, Byron Sharp does believe in numbers, at least for something.
Of course.
Yeah.
Righto, so we might throw open a question to the room. We have, a couple of experts here. I'm sure someone's got a question. You can also ask one of Adam or I if you like, but we're just getting a mic. Adam, anything you'd like to sort of add to this conversation while we're waiting for a
You
question?
don't believe in marketing sciences. You believe in marketing. You think it's a load of wank.
No, that's not true. I have a problem with the word science because I don't think it is science. I prefer to call it marketing effectiveness. No, I believe in the first principles passionately.
Do you? I liked it when you said you don't think it's a. You say I came on a bit strong there. You don't think it's a science. You think it's about effectiveness.
Yeah.
And I like that. I reckon.
Yeah.
That,
Well, that's how I think.
debate that a lot in my head. Is it really like psychology? I think psychology held itself back a lot by practicing the scientist practitioner model and cognitive behaviour psychology and all that stuff. Whereas really what somebody wants is, when you come into the room, they just want to be seen as a human and understood. And that's pretty hard to science that.
Yeah.
And I think the same parallel happens in marketing. We're dealing with ephemeral concepts like brands and people.
Yeah.
To science that is pretty...
What's your definition of science?
Replicable test and learning, probably something around that.
What's yours, Henry?
Well, when you make enough observations of something, you have a number of observations of something, and if you see that observation repeating, you then draw a conclusion.
So pretty similar, right? But the walk...
You can observe anything in the world.
The walk has not come out of... The Telstra walk has not come out of science. It may have come out of marketing effectiveness. It may...
Well, the thing about the Telstra walk, we didn't design it and say we're going to create this, walk that's going to become a sensation on TikTok. I mean, but the principles of marketing effectiveness are absolutely baked into it, which is... What's really fascinating is we didn't just try and start it on TikTok. It started on broadcast, free-to-air sports is what actually helped it to become a thing in culture. So that's broad reach, mental availability, all the things we're talking about was key. Distinctiveness is absolutely key. Like, we crafted a very distinctive way of walking for that character, which is great. I would say that's a distinctive brand asset more than your logo. So, distinctiveness is baked into it, which and the other thing which I passionately believe in is 60-40 brand versus performance.
The
That
other,
is a
the other
pure
thing
brand
that,
message.
the other thing that may be in there at some level is the walk was based, you've told me, on Mick Jagger's walk.
It was, yeah.
And you call it a strut. And
Yeah.
maybe there's just something kind of instinctively cool and nonchalant about the walk that
Yeah.
people find aspirational, but they've
Yeah.
kind of latched onto
Well,
as
I think so. Like, for instance, one of the more common walks on TikTok is kids who just feel like they've aced their exam. They straight out with the Telstra walk because they're feeling confident and, relaxed and good about it. But look, I'd love to sit here and go, I'm such a genius. I designed this cultural sensation called Telstra walk. It was a lucky thing that happened organically.
Yeah.
But the question then I think for marketers is, so how do you lean into it? Because I think you can totally ruin it if you turn up too heavy-handed as a brand, because suddenly it's not their thing, it's your thing, and So we made a choice to, at the State of Origin, which this year State of Origin, over 5 million people watched State of Origin 3. I mean, massive broadcast TV event that we haven't seen for a long time. We chose to show our brand ad, except the walk starts with our animated guy, and then we cut in TikTok walks, edited really well, so it felt like one fluid walk, and we played that. And that was just enough sort of fueling it without us sort of getting into TikTok and trying to sort of be part of that. And that actually, it kind of doubled in numbers after we did that. And a lot of the people did it sort of felt quite seen, if you like.
Doubled in sales after doing it?
Doubled the size of the walk.
Oh, doubled in walks.
Yeah. Doubled number of walks. Yeah. 20 million on TikTok, which is for a legacy telco
Sales.
brand. Walks. All right. Do we have anyone who would like to ask a question? Tom from B&T, of course. Journalist by trade, by nature.
It'd be weird if I didn't ask a question. You've spoken a lot about kind of what you've unlearned over your careers. What are you currently learning that you think the country, perhaps even the world's leading marketers, should also be investing their time into?
Wow. Anyone like to start? What are you currently learning?
I mean, it's not. I'm learning not to be afraid of AI, but also I've got teens. AI is. I'm learning to not to be afraid of it, but also be afraid of it. We had a day the other day where a lot of people said they were talking to AI therapists, and that's not an amazing idea. I suppose you can. I don't know.
It's a great idea.
Well, it is and it isn't, because they just validate you. They're not going to argue with you. Because the thing about AI is, and my teens use it for search, is that AI is not designed to give you the facts. AI is designed to engage and give you content. So it will even tell you things that aren't true to keep you engaged. And that's a big danger. And I think that is something everyone in the world needs to be aware of. However, being a media person who spent, my first early years typing in what ratings I thought I would get, drawing a line, did I get them? There's so much automation that AI can deliver us that can mean that everyone's doing the thinking and not having to do the drudge work. And I think that's where we're learning and testing that.
Cool. Henry?
The thing I've been most interested in at the moment, I'm not sure if it's relevant to marketers, is I've been researching a lot about the equivalent of a neuron in a human brain against the volume of parameters in a large language model, just to understand an approximate rate at which we'll hit artificial general intelligence. So the current rate is about, to reach the equivalent of the human brain, you need approximately 100 trillion parameters within a large language model to be the equivalent of an average human brain. An average human brain consumes about 20 watts of electricity as well. So currently the best large language model in the world is about 1.8 trillion parameters. So if you think about the road to artificial general intelligence in terms of the volume of intelligence that we currently have in the models, we're at about 1.8% of where the human brain is, which given their capability today is incredibly scary.
Because if you're an AI fan, that is called the singularity, when AI becomes more intelligent than us, and then we're done.
Singularity is when we merge, which is inevitable.
Yes.
Okay.
So
One of my favourite sort of sayings is the last month's been a big year in AI.
Yeah.
So how long is it going to take to get that next 98%?
well, I
Do you
think,
think?
well, there's no evidence that Moore's law is not scaling, right? So we're roughly doubling each year, is kind of what's happening.
So based on doubling each year, it's quite a way away.
Yeah, you'd say 5 to 10 years. Yeah, but I think the big problem is going to be electricity consumption. So if you scale up the usage of AI in that context, just with the current usage patterns, so like just basic prompting, no infrastructure running and stuff like that, you roughly consume about 10% of the world's electricity with a human equivalent AI, just to kind of interact with humans on the baseline level.
Yeah.
So I think that, it's incredibly exciting to me to think, well, can we break things up to be more efficient and things like that? Mutinex is doing a lot of work in this space. We have a number of ML researchers doing incredibly deep research in the States on this problem as it relates to marketing effectiveness generally. And so that's why we're quite interested in researching the volume of parameters that will create AGI. And then I think the question then becomes, for a lot of people, where does AGI sort of sit in terms of, everyone in this room has different experience, right? To some degree, your brains are just LLMs. So you are just literally...
It's a depressing thought, Henry.
It's true. It's true. You're just a collection of neurons. So in some degree, like, our experiences shape how we think, how we behave, and what we do. To a large degree, the experiences, both had and not had, of an AI in data, which is kind of their equivalent of the human experience, will dictate a lot of how AIs think and behave. So when we talk about fine-tuning, we're really talking about how do we create a certain creation with a certain set of experience is a really good way to think about it. And so part of the hypothesis goes that I suspect AI is going to break up a lot in the next 5 years. There's going to be hundreds of foundational models. There's not going to be 3. It's extremely unlikely that there's going to be one supermodel.
So you don't think there'll be a Google of AI?
No, absolutely not. I think that is the least likely scenario for AI. I think the most likely scenario for AI is hundreds of models trained with a very large volume of parameters, because I think the generalization will just naturally converge everything. So the really big models, much like humanity collectively can get dumber and dumber as we kind of elevate. That's why we put individuals in charge of leadership at times and things like that. And so I think the same thing will happen in AI. You'll have a huge collection of them.
Have you learned something that's not AI, Adam?
Sorry?
Have you learned something that's not about AI?
That's not about AI?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it spins off that. And to answer your question, I reckon what I'm fascinated by at the moment is just going back into my textbooks from university and existentialism and so on, and understanding what it means to be human in a time when every decision I make, I can make that better through a machine than I can as myself. So all the decisions, whether they be marketing decisions or parenting decisions or creative decisions, the world's information, which is basically held, is now available here, far easier than through whatever LLM you use. If all of that is at your fingertips, what's your contribution as a human? And so I think the fact that some people are still kind of brave the rain and so on, just to kind of see 4 people talk face to face on something that's going to be downloaded and available not being here, I find that fascinating. So, and I just think just trying to understand what it means to be human is becoming will become increasingly important.
One final question. Anyone else got a question they'd like to ask?
Okay, I have one. I guess MMM tests the channels that you know when you're in and you use regularly, which you can get hooked on for ROI results, which you mentioned, Claire, and I found really interesting. But media agencies and marketers are driving bravery to try all these new channels, you know, gaming, for example. How do you approach that in business and explore and push these new channels and take the risk to drive like brand building exercises, as you mentioned as well?
Test and learn, right, Claire? Test and learn.
Yeah, that's exactly
because,
right.
Because will never be the driver of what I do. It's the results of what we've done. So we follow the mass channel, multi-channel, trying new things, going where our consumers are. One of the things that I think a lot of marketers have to unlearn is you are not generally the consumer. We're white collar, we work in the city, we're paid more than many of the average households. So what you personally consume in media, which is generally a lot, I haven't watched radio or television unless I happen to go to my parents' house. I don't even watch it. Hardly anyone does, but actually a lot of people do. So you follow where the consumers are. So I would never let I would never be bound by just because we've been doing an MMM on it that we shouldn't. And I don't really think anyone would. You follow and then you test it based on then you see the results and how to sharpen it.
I think the MMMs are getting smarter at that too. So you're kind of able to see small amounts of signal. You're able to kind of extrapolate out as well at the moment. For example, an MMM can map what channels kind of broadly look similar characteristically to channels that have been successful for you. So we've got to get them smarter, and also MMMs have to be about experimentation too. Like, you know, experimentation is a key part of it.
So we have one more question. Yeah, sure. We've got time for one more question.
We have time.
Yeah, we do.
I'm Beck. Hello.
Where are you from, Beck?
Uber. Something that on topic of marketing science or marketing effectiveness, something that I'm quite interested in is the relationship between brand distinctiveness and brand consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And
I can feel a question coming on here for Brent.
So, one thing that Telstra does particularly well is it's very distinctive in its category, and it's something that I really admire for what you do there. Brand consistency, to what extent is that important to you, or what is your general view on that? Because obviously it's quite a deliberate way that you go about your campaigns from campaign to campaign, and I'm interested to hear your views on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing I get criticised for the most is people say it's not very consistent. I would argue it's incredibly consistent. It's just not executionally the same. So my view is I think one of the things we have to unlearn, coming back to the theme, is all these marketers think it has to look the same. It's got to look the same in every channel. It's got to look the same execution to execution. I'm more interested in, does it feel the same? And not having to look the same all the time. And if I look at the greatest brands in the world like Apple, every time you know it's an Apple ad, but the executions are quite different. They are. And so we sort of think more about creating a very distinctive brand voice. We have a level of craft that we think adds to the distinctiveness of our brand and helps us pull apart from other brands in this country. And we call it brand coherence versus brand consistency. And look, it's not lost on me that the minute I put up a Telstra logo, everyone knows the brand. I've got 100% awareness. I've got a big budget. I've got some, it's very different for me than someone who's trying to build a brand maybe on a smaller budget and, probably needs to be more consistent. I find slavish consistency a box that limits creativity and makes brands less interesting. That's my point of view. It's certainly working for us, but it might not work for every brand.
I reckon contextually putting the context of work you're doing in place, like talking about Telstra's position in the marketplace, what it needs to do, how the business challenges it faces, the media budget it has. I think putting the work in that context is really, really important versus a struggling brand, fighting it out, eking it out, starting up, where consistency of message might become more and more important. I just like hearing you talk about that.
And the other important thing I didn't say on terms of the business challenge, I mean, the challenge for me when I arrived at Telstra was I've never seen a brand like this where it is such a polarising brand. Like, talk about love or hate, that is absolutely true for Telstra. And we had a real challenge with our reputation. Whenever those polls come out on most trusted brands in Australia, we're on the bottom end, not the top end of those. So we have a reputational challenge, and there's a whole bunch of non-customers who don't feel how much better our customer service is, who don't feel how good our network is. They've completely made up their mind about Telstra and their detractors. So if I am just consistently turning up the same old way as the same old Telstra and they know it's Telstra instantly, how am I going to drive reappraisal with that group of people? I have to sneak up on them a little bit, surprise them, make it feel like a very different Telstra, because that's the only chance I've got to drive reappraisal, and that's a massive part of what we're trying to do on Telstra. And it's working. So all the work has way more traction with non-customers than customers. It works fine with customers, but it works better with non-customers. So for us, that's going to drive reappraisal and ultimately future demand and ultimately growth. So there is thinking, but I'm just not being willy-nilly inconsistent. Like, there's real thinking behind it, but we honestly believe that it is a much more imaginative and interesting brand if we can turn up in quite new and different ways, but to us, always very consistent to our voice, not our executions, but our voice. And we think we've got a very distinctive voice in market. And it's just more fun. Like, I don't know.
What do you
I don't
reckon,
want to
Beck?
make the same thing all the time.
Has he convinced you?
You know? They're part of it. We can't piss them off, but they're part of it. But they're not as hard to convince as the non-customers. Look, you do it very different at Uber. You guys are creative consistent. You guys have got a very consistent platform. You turn up in a very consistent way, and you're a brilliantly effective brand as well. I don't think there's one way to do things.
Not every brand needs to be creative. It's great what you're doing.
That's a little unfair.
Is that what you were saying? Oh,
No,
I'm
I'm saying Uber has a very consistent
sorry.
creative platform. I'm not saying they're not creative. I don't think you're not creative. That was Adam.
That was me being.
Now,
Your Draco Malfoy ad is my favorite. I actually Google it and watch it sometimes.
so thank you. Great question. Thank you. So we always like to finish our podcast, because it's called Black T-shirts, asking our guests what their black T-shirt would be if they could sum up their marketing philosophy and put on a black T-shirt. Henry, you're on to about your 4th black T-shirt with us, so you should be ready for this question. But before, give Claire a minute to think about hers. Adam's wearing his at the moment, and Adam loves his black T-shirt. Tell everyone what your black T-shirt is and why you called it that.
My black T-shirt just says colour on it, because I think that's the role that I like marketing to play. I like the idea that we're adding colour and richness into the world, and I think that's kind of what creative.
And of course, deeply ironic on a plain black T-shirt.
And it's sadly ironic on a black T-shirt. It's sad, and it's even more sadly ironic with colourful shoes on. It's like, what the fuck am I trying to say? But also, interestingly, Brent's black T-shirt was, what was your? This could be better, which he stole from one of our guests, and I ordered my T-shirt and his T-shirt, but have completely, still a year later, forgot to send him his T-shirt.
Still waiting.
So
Definitely be better.
yeah, exactly. That could be better. You're right.
Yeah. Claire, what would your black T-shirt be?
I think it would be, I haven't really talked about it a lot today, but I'm pretty passionate about it, and Ed, who I worked with, will have heard me say it. It really grinds my gears when marketers, creatives, media people think they are the audience. So sometimes we're like, I'll take radio off because I don't listen to the radio. I'm like, yeah, I'm talking to a tradie in far north Queensland who's got a bunch of people in a work site and doesn't buy Spotify. That's why radio's on there. So I think mine would be, don't advertise to you, and that is for the marketers.
Don't advertise to you. Very good. Henry.
Growth trumps all problems.
Growth trumps all problems. Is this because you're moving to America, you're sort of sucking up to Trump?
Yeah.
Is there a Trump angle here?
A little
No?
pun.
So go again. Growth?
Growth trumps all problems.
Growth trumps all problems. Very good. Thanks everyone for coming and joining us live here for a live black T-shirts. This will come out at some point when Adam and I can get motivated enough to do a 6th season. It's coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's in the works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yep.
Yeah.
A month or 2.
Yeah, great. So stay tuned. But thanks for coming, everyone. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks again to B&T and Mutinex for putting this on. And happy Friday. Thanks very much.
God bless.